recorded, and recording can be found later on the webpage of Nordic Sustainable Construction. My name is Marja Tiainen, and I work as a senior specialist at the Ministry of the Environment of Finland, and I am project owner and leading this project from our part. This is the last webinar of this whole project. We already have had several other webinars about this project and other subtasks of this work package. The recordings and the materials can be found on the webpage of Nordic Sustainable Construction. Before we start the actual content of the webinar, I will shortly say a couple of words of the whole project and who is behind it. Nordic Sustainable Construction is a program under the Nordic Council of Ministers which contribute to the Nordic Vision 2030 of becoming a sustainable and integrated region by 2030 in respect to sustainable construction and housing. Purpose of this program is to accelerate the knowledge and capacity for a green transition in the Nordic construction sector, also strengthen Nordic collaboration and ensure an aligned Nordic plan. The program is organized into the following 5 work packages, working with a specific area of sustainable construction. So we have Nordic harmonization of life cycle assessment, circular business models and procurement, sustainable construction materials and architecture, emission-free construction sites, and program secretariat and competencies for reuse in constructions. This webinar and project belongs to the first work package, Nordic harmonization of the life cycle assessment. In Nordic harmonization of life cycle assessment, we work towards harmonizing normative methods for building LCAs in the Nordic countries. Similar approaches will benefit construction industry and policymakers on national and municipal levels so that we can support each other's climate ambitions in regulation and in green public procurement, but also in European policy development. Here is the subtask of the Nordic harmonization of life cycle assessment, work package 1. So we have 5 tasks: Nordic LCA practices, database and scenarios, digitalization of LCA, limit values, and the 5th task acceleration program. And we will hear more about this today, or one of its subtasks. The acceleration program, the target of the acceleration program is to accelerate the low carbonization of building sector and support building project and aiming at lesser emissions. There are two subtasks of this task 5, and we will hear more about one of those subtasks today. So thank you from my part. More information of the project can be found on the webpage. Go and search the content that's been available, the reports, any reports, the webinar recordings, and much more. So I will give the floor to Nikolai from Sweco. Please enjoy.
Thank you very much, Maria. Yes, I just need to share my screen here. 1 second. Yes, so once again, as Maria just said, welcome to this launch webinar of the low carbon clinics, as we call it, this subtask. So today we're launching a report. It should actually already be online from this morning. We will also have a link in the slides, and you should also receive a link to the report afterwards. But the report is a collection of knowledge about solution and challenges related to to decarbonization from actual real-life building cases from the Nordic countries and Estonia. And I just see in my slides that I forgot to put in the agenda, so we will just tell you a little bit about what's going to happen the next hour. So first I will just present like the overall project, both like the overall task 5 that Maria just told about, but also then go deeper into this subtask that we are presenting today, and some of the key findings and key challenges that we found when we work with this. And then we have 2 of our local experts on board today from Estonia and from Sweden, Annie and Anna, who will go a little bit deeper into to the projects they were hosting, the project clinics they were hosting, and go deeper into actual findings and challenges in these projects. So, and in the end, we will have a Q&A session. You're also welcome to ask questions during the presentation in the chat. If it's a simple question, then that we can reply quickly to, we will try to do this in the chat. If it's a bigger question or more complex question, we will try to save it for the Q&A. I think we have, is it 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the end for this Q&A? So
10 minutes, yeah.
So save your questions for that. Yes. Then I will just go to the next slide. Yeah, as Maria just mentioned, this work is part of the Nordic Sustainable Construction Program, which is funded by the Nordic Council of Ministers. And the program has been structured in these 5 work packages and been running for since 2021, and was finalized and wrapped up here in December, where a report with all the knowledge was also launched, which is a very interesting report that I think you should go in and read. It's on the webpage also, the Nordic Sustainable Construction webpage. So the project we are presenting today is placed in this work package 1, the Nordic harmonization of LCA. And work package 1 consisted of several tasks, these 5 tasks, all with the goal of investigating possibilities and challenges for harmonizing LCA in the Nordic countries and Estonia. So it was there was tasks about LCA practices, data for LCA, calculating LCA with digital models, limit values, monitoring decarbonization, and regulatory needs for harmonizing, which has all been studied, and several interesting reports has been published, and they are all to be found on the Nordic Sustainable Construction webpage. So go in there and have a good read of all these reports. So task 5 in this work package, which we are presenting today, is this acceleration program with knowledge sharing clinics and a best practice catalog. Yeah, and it was divided like this. So we call it task 5.1 and task 5.2. So task 5.1 is these knowledge sharing clinics, which we are also calling low carbon clinics. That's why we have the title on the report, which is low carbon clinics. And task 5.2 is this best practice catalog, which we have launched back in, I think it's a month ago, right before Christmas. So the overall purpose with task 5 as a whole is to speed up the decarbonization of the building and construction sector through knowledge sharing. So construction companies across the Nordics are in different phases in setting and implementing low carbon solutions. And in many cases, external support is needed to set sustainability targets for projects and implement low carbon and circular solutions. So that's why we are why there has been a focus on this knowledge sharing and accelerating the decarbonization of the construction sector from the Nordic Council of Ministers. So for this task 5, the team behind was Sweco in Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland. Then we had Build Aalborg University on board from Denmark also. Then we had EFLA from Iceland and LCA support from Estonia. And today you will meet me. My name is Nikolai, and I work here at Sweco in Denmark, where the project management of this project have been anchored. And then you will also meet Anna and Annie, as I just told before, from Sweden and from Estonia, to tell you a little bit more about what they experienced in the clinics they held in their countries. Yes, I will just do a little teaser for the task 5.2. So it's which we launched right before Christmas with what you can find there. So we created this catalog of low carbon buildings located in each of the Nordic countries and Estonia. And we tried to include at least 3 buildings from each country. I think there was one country where we only had 2 buildings that we ended up with in the catalog. But other than that, we have a collection of more than 3 buildings from each country. Yeah, so we gathered and evaluated the projects to ensure various typologies and various low carbon solutions. So it's a very interesting collection of knowledge from buildings that actually have been built and where the LCA has been calculated and shared here. So yeah, and there is also some very interesting conclusions from this catalog if you go in and read, where we actually present the solutions that they are using to decarbonize. So it's very interesting reading. So I also put in the, I think I have it here. Yeah, so this is the front page when you open this link that I have in the bottom here. So when you receive the slides, you can just open the link that you have that I have included down here and go read. So in task 5.1, just need to change slide here. The aim was to increase the know-how in the market. We ended up having, now I put down workshops here, but 11 clinics with workshops for clients with projects in various building phases. So we both had some projects that was in a very early design phase, and we also had projects that were about to be built. So the aim was to share these real life decarbonization solutions and challenges in different phases of a building project. And just a little bit behind the timeline for this project, we started out back in June, where we had a first webinar where we shared a sign-up link, and then we had this sign-up period over the summer, and then we started hosting these low carbon clinics. And the low carbon clinics consisted of first a startup meeting where we tried to figure out what the client wanted to talk about, what was important for them to focus on, of course with the mind on decarbonization. But if they had something specific that they wanted to go into, some specific solutions, some specific building materials that we needed to discuss, or some specific processes, then we could actually focus the workshop that we held. After we had this startup meeting with the client, then we had a workshop where we went deeper into the project, both the challenges and solutions. And after the workshops, we had some times between a workshop and then a follow-up to see if the client had implemented any solutions. We were a bit short on time here, so it was a bit short time to actually implement a lot of solutions in a project. But at least we have some reflections from the clients from that we have from the workshop until the follow-ups. So that's what we're sharing in the report also. And then we of course drafted the report in November, December. So we ended up with these 2 projects from Denmark, Iceland, Finland, 3 projects from Sweden, and 1 project from Estonia and Norway. And I have the link to the report down here in the bottom. And I will just quickly share some of our key findings for solutions when working with the decarbonization agenda. That we found from these 11 clinics, and then also some key challenges that we found from working with these clients. So next slide here. So we have these 4 key findings that you will also find in the report. So the carbon limit values and continuous LCA monitoring. So several projects we found that they focused on adhering to climate budgets and continuous LCA monitoring. And one of the projects from Denmark, we found that the client worked with actually both their own and also the investors' CO2 requirements to the project. So that was a constraint, and that actually worked for them to keep the climate impact from the buildings lower. And then we had these hotspot analysis and data for early insights, which we found to be quite essential for identifying carbon reduction opportunities. So this early data insight necessitates collaboration from stakeholders, of course, throughout the entire value chain. And I mean, now I'm also taking one of the challenges up here, but some of the clients emphasized the need for new agreements or new ways of working together across disciplines regarding data delivery for these early insights. Because right now we are not used to, I mean, at least a lot of disciplines are not used to delivering this data. And many disciplines maybe want to wait with delivering specific data for constructions, for example. So maybe some new ways of working together or new agreements is the way to go for these early insights on data. Then we also had flexible building use was also discussed as a solution. The goal here is to optimize building utilization and prevent vacant periods throughout a year. So this improved utilization can lead to a reduced need for additional construction. So this is kind of an approach to contribute to lowering the environmental impact for like the whole building stock, and not maybe not on a single building level. And we had maybe some of the obvious solutions, you could say, but it is to work with some of the low carbon solutions for materials, so bio-based materials, and then also low carbon solutions for more conventional materials. So low carbon concrete was for example a central theme in several projects. So this was some of the key findings that we found from these 11 clinics that was mentioned across the countries. Several of these findings, and then we have the key challenges here. So variability in LCA methodologies, particularly in certification schemes, not being the same methodologies as in the national regulations. This is a significant challenge because it requires a lot of time spent on making both LCA for one method and then for another method. And you could say that this is also a cross-border challenge. This is what we found from our work in, we also delivered some work for this task 4, which was also presented by Maria, where we found that we can actually, as it is now, we cannot really compare LCA results across borders because the methodologies are so differently structured. So this is also kind of a cross-border challenge. Yeah. So we also had material-related challenges was also emphasized in many of the clinics. We had, for example, one of the clinics in Finland concerns were raised about the long-term performance of some of these newer low-carbon solutions because they haven't been tested for these long-term performance. Yeah, and some project also faced difficulties in sourcing low-carbon materials that fulfill the functional requirements that they needed for the project. Then we had this location limitation or geological preconditions, such as seismic activity and earthquakes, which present a significant challenge in some of the countries here. So project needs to consider these factors when selecting materials and designing structures to ensure the durability and safety of the buildings. So that's of course a big thing here. And actually we also just briefly touched upon this. We didn't really discuss it in many of the clinics, but the future climate changes will also probably affect some of the material palette or the material selection choices. So the last one that we found is maybe also an obvious one, but the time and cost constraints, of course. So balancing these sustainability goals with project constraints such as time and cost is a common challenge. And one of the primary challenges that was touched upon in these clinics is the cost associated with low emission measures. So, for example, in one of the projects also in Finland, the client faced financial constraints because they could not increase rents due to it being student housing. So they couldn't increase rent to cover the additional cost for these sustainability measures. So that's of course a problem. We also found that, or at least according to the clients here participating, that the certification, if they had certification schemes on the projects, the certification process is often quite time consuming and requires extensive paperwork, which can be restrictive due to limited project timelines. So some of the clients was of the opinion that resources spent on certifications could maybe be better used for actual low carbon solutions instead. So that was some of the key findings, the overall key findings summarized. You will also find these 4 key solutions and key challenges more detailed described in the report. So now I will give the floor to Annie from Estonia. And Annie, I think I will just click through the slides, right?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. So I'm Anni from Estonia, and I will represent the Estonian case for this clinic. I'm warning you in advance, I might cough in between, so I'm trying to mute myself for that moment when it happens. I'm a little bit sick. But yeah, about the project. So the project for this clinic was Loodusmaja, that means the nature house. It's a museum and an office, and consisting of 15,250 square meters of net floor area. And it is currently under construction, so it's being built right now. Next slide. So the building itself, it consists of 3 parts. The A bit is museum, and the B and C, they are an office space for Ministry of Climate, as well as Natural History Museum and other environment-related offices and organizations. This project was a very good project for me personally, because I was the one who conducted life cycle assessment for this back in 2020 and 21. And it is the first project that is public for which LCA was conducted in Estonia. So it is a very it's like a pilot project in many ways for us. The LCAs that were done were for preliminary and technical design. And yeah, so we in the clinic that was also used. This previous work was used inside the clinic workshop. Next slide, please. The workshop took place on September 18th, and the participants were then from the entire project team was actually there. So client, the state, people from Riigi Kinnisvara, the state real estate manager, the Minister of Climate, contractor, architects and engineers. So in total, we were 14 people. Unfortunately, I didn't remember to take a picture, but it was like a good group we had together. Lots of the people who were there, who are involved with this project today, were not the same people who were involved when I first did the LCA studies for this project. So part of this was also just reminding of what was done. And the key topic we had was actually then analyzing of the completed studies. So we went through this LCAs that I completed, and we were looking what were the hotspots, and just went over the study. It might even sound like a very basic thing to do, but Estonia is not as far with the entire low carbon construction as the Nordic countries are. We are aiming to fix that, but at the moment it's not common practice at all to calculate LCA for a building project. It is rather like a rare case if the developer is very like looking to the future, or they like typically also developers who have more resources to do so. And sometimes in case where the owner of the building is pursuing a green building certificate, but generally it is not common practice here to calculate LCA for a building project. So this is like a very important pilot case for the public sector then. One of the things that I found out that was very positive from what has changed since I actually did the LCA was that so the building has also a big underground parking that is actually a requirement as part of the city of Tallinn, where certain buildings in certain areas in the city center, they have to build out a specific number of parking places, and that was actually managed to so they managed to reduce this number with the conversations with the city of Tallinn, and that was a big part of the carbon footprint, of course, was underground. Then the next key topic we had was how to incorporate LCA practice into the workflow. And this, again, it might sound like a very trivial topic to discuss, but it's not been done in Estonia before. So it's not very clear what should be the process of how LCA should be part of the entire planning of the building. And for Riigi Kinnisvara as well, it's been the first time when they did something like this. And now the same building is under construction. So they are really trying to find ways how to incorporate LCA as a practice into the workflow. And the last key topic was how to conduct LCA for as-built of this project. And that was something that Riigi Kinnisvara was specifically interested, because they want to then understand how they can put together LCA for as-built projects. That is also then a first time in the public sector in Estonia, and I'm not even sure if in generally if there has been any building projects in Estonia where as-built LCA has been conducted. So that was one of the most important topics in this workshop. Next slide, please. Yeah, and we'll stop on the key takeaways and try to open different angles what came out from this workshop. So first, we discussed about how to integrate the process. So the process really needs to be mapped out, and we don't have very clear understanding yet how this process should go. Like coincidentally enough, yesterday I had a meeting with Estonian Digital Construction Cluster, whose members are also people who are involved in this project. And we discussed again that it's about the process. And one of the things that was mentioned, that it's very unclear at the moment who is the party who is responsible for conducting an LCA. So it's not clear who should be the one who is taking responsibility, who are the people actually who do need to learn about the LCA, or who are the people on the other end who might need to check the LCA so that the quality wouldn't be poor once the LCA requirement comes into place. And for the background as well, I didn't mention it yet, the roadmap for Estonia has also changed. So we had understanding until the end of last year that the mandatory requirement for calculating LCA will be enforced 1st of July 2025. But with the delay of taking over the climate law, that has also postponed implementation of the regulation that requires LCA calculation. So most likely it will be in place 1st of January 2026. And that has even more created a situation that the market doesn't necessarily have the initiative to start understanding the process and to actually peel out from this experience who is the one who should be responsible of this calculation. So yeah, that was like a big part of the discussion in the workshop. And then a second point, sounding again possibly like very, very trivial, but what we discussed and what was not necessarily a surprise, but it was something that was an important topic of the workshop, was that it is actually possible to optimize carbon footprint in every stage of the project. And as part of it, what we did in the workshop, so I'm also EPD developer and verifier. We went over with the project team of how to read an EPD, how to compare EPDs, where to find EPDs, so that the project team actually has understanding of how to compare different materials and what kind of information they need to get from environmental product declarations. So we went over this. And the last discussion topic we had was the as-built LCA. And as mentioned, this is like a pilot case in many ways. So Riigi Kinnisvara took a goal to actually conduct as-built LCA for this project. And the aim of this is actually very sort of output, kind of what can be taken out from this as-built LCA is very important for Estonia, because it can give very important feedback on our method. So we do have Estonian national method that was published in last year autumn, but it's not been really used yet. And any sort of like maybe weak points of this method do not come out because this method is not being used, because there is no regulation in place. And so like it's quite typical situation that the market doesn't respond until it's not absolutely mandatory to start calculating. And for that reason, it is very difficult to actually understand how well the method is making different assumptions, or are these assumptions good or bad, or which one of them needs some improvement. So that's one of the big outcomes of this workshop, that Riigi Kinnisvara has actually acknowledged that yes, so if they conduct as-built LCA for this project, then we can actually get very valuable input from there for our method development. And the same actually for the database. So we have the Estonian database available. Of course, the when they would start compare the LCAs that have been already conducted that were not based on Estonian method, because the method didn't exist, but it's still using local data as much as possible, and some of the assumptions can be then adjusted because it's all described in the report of the project. So yeah, the big goal with this as-built LCA calculation is to actually get some kind of knowledge out of it for our own method development and database development. Next slide. Yeah, so this is just a picture of the building being built at the moment. I didn't mention that it's it's a timber construction, as you can see on this image, and it's one of the first ones that is such a big and like a landmark type of building that is being constructed actually as like a timber building. So all in all, how I would like to sum up perhaps is that Estonia is really in the beginning of this whole journey, and through this project, part of the task 5, but also like other tasks, has actually brought lots of knowledge to Estonia, and we have learned massively from this project to actually get going with this topic, and I think from here on we can only improve. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Annie. Very interesting to hear about the project and also the whole, I mean, situation or status of LCA being implemented in Estonia. So now we will go to you, Anna, in Sweden, and again, you will just tell me when to change slides.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Anna, working at Sweco in Sweden, and took part in these 3 workshops in Sweden for 3 quite different clients. Catena is a developer of all kind of logistics buildings all over Scandinavia, and then we have Ubus, one of the larger developer of housing in Sweden and Norway, and then we have Umeå municipality in the north of Sweden. And all of these clients have high ambitions, lots of knowledge, and have come quite far already in reducing CO2 in their projects. And in general, it was these ambitious clients that applied for the workshops in Sweden. That was a clear trend. But of course, that does not mean that there are no challenge left. So if we take the next slide, we start by talking about logistics projects, and just to mention first some special conditions of a typical logistics building that can affect the results of an LCA calculation. And that is that, for example, a warehouse can have a high ceiling and thereby larger outer walls compared to indoor floor area than other projects. And since the carbon emissions in Sweden are reported per gross floor area, this might then give an impression of high carbon emissions compared to other buildings. But then again, this type of buildings typically have few inner walls and maybe a small amount of room completions. And this can then work in favor for a result showing lower emissions than other buildings with the same size. If we go to the next slide, we also discussed at the workshop some technical issues, and the main one was how to find an alternative to the traditional outer wall construction with sandwich panels, which are common in logistics buildings, because they have a quite high climate effect in large emissions in the production. But there are several benefits for the contractor and developer working with the sandwich panels, not least that they are fast to assemble and require little maintenance and also have a relatively low cost So these reasons are why they are so extensively used. But if we go to slide 4, then there are, of course, alternatives to this construction. And I'm going to try to explain this graph where we see a comparison of 3 different wall types. And the gray bars on the left axis show the CO2 emissions in production, and the yellow line and the right axis show the cost per square meter. And the first wall from the left is the traditional construction. Next is an identical sandwich panel from the same manufacturer, and to the right is a wooden stud wall. So you can see that there is a difference, and it's relevant to compare things. The problem with this particular wooden wall is that the cost increases, which is negative for the project, of course, and also that the facade is not included in the construction. So the emissions vary quite heavily depending on the choice of facade. So that is the red dotted bar that you see, that's like the span of the emission depending on what facade you combine this construction with. But it doesn't really end here. If you push, there you can see that if we concentrate on these 2 different sandwich panel walls that we had, and the ones to the left and in the middle, maybe you noticed that I said that they are identical. So the same type of materials, metal sheets with mineral wool in between, and they have the same dimension and thicknesses. So then, why the difference in emission? And this is where the complexity comes in, that when doing this kind of technical comparisons, you end up having to dig deeper and to see, well, what is the difference? Why is this? And which one of these should we choose? Can we trust these numbers? And so on. So if you go a step further, we can compare some numbers for these 2 wall types. And when I did this digging, I actually found that the low carbon alternative, which you see here to the right, actually required more energy for production than the traditional product. But if you go a step further, we can then dig even deeper and see that, well, what could be the reason then that the traditional, that this one to the right have lower carbon emissions when they have higher energy requirements? Well, it seems like the factory in which this wall to the right is produced, it's the same manufacturer, but they have 2 different factories. And in the factory for the low carbon panel, they have a contract for renewable electricity, which means that they can count the electricity in their EPD as 0 carbon. And they also use a larger amount of recycled steel in the product. So this is, we discussed this a lot, that you might have to dig quite deep into technical documents to see these differences, and then also discuss this number. What do we do with this, and how do you value this kind of information when you make your choice of material? So if we go to next slide, we go to the next client, a developer who acts all over the country, and also in not only in Sweden. So since the Swedish law does not yet contain any limit values for carbon emissions for a building project, the municipalities that have high ambitions now make up their own. And what you see in this picture is the 48 Swedish cities that as of today take part in the EU's Viable Cities program for climate neutral cities. So these cities have signed up to achieve climate neutral goals, and then of course they have to push the construction sector. And therefore many of them now today are in the process of setting their own limit values and also developing their own calculation methods for how to report this, since the law doesn't have limit values and so on. So then these type of developers ask themselves, how can we manage this? How can we keep up with this knowledge? How many local methodologies is reasonable that we should have knowledge on, and how do we handle this? And as an addition to local methods, we also have the environmental certification schemes. So if you go forward, there is this question of they also have their own methodologies. In Sweden, you can use all the international schemes and also a number of different Swedish ones. So this client really was asking themselves, how should we handle this problem with keeping track on how to calculate, but also how should we handle the difference in the results? And different methods, of course, lead to different results. And one of the extremes is that installing solar panels on can give up to a 15 times difference in benefit with different schemes, depending on these different methods. And some schemes only give credit for solar panels that are on the actual building and not when the project assembles them further away. And these issues can be tricky to navigate in. Is the benefit of solar panels not the same wherever they generate electricity? And should we as a developer put them up even though we do not get credit towards our certification? Or should we invest in another sustainability aspects that actually give us the credit? And which one gives the best real effect, not just calculated one, for mitigating climate change? And if you go forward, this client also wanted to discuss the municipality's responsibilities to give the right incentives and to at least not put up any barriers to reducing climate change. And an example that we discussed is the municipality's detailed plans for an area where often both the facade material and its color can be specified. And these strict specifications then hinders the reuse of material, since the specified material or color might not be available in the amount needed at the exact right time. So this client really wanted to use more reused material and recycle, but saw that maybe the municipalities need to help them here. They also wanted to give this message that even though they have quite a low carbon emissions for their projects, they think that yes, we can still do more and we can still do better. So if you go forward to the next slide, we can talk about the third client and some challenges there. For a municipality, the playing field is a bit different. The diploma from a certification and the market value of the building is less important. Everything is funded by taxpayers' money. and how do you what do you do with those money becomes important. And at the same time, you also have the responsibility to act sustainably, and you can't really get different results if you don't try new things and are innovative. But how much can you play around with new solutions and start pilot projects and still being able to explain to the residents that you are not taking too big of a risk? The municipalities do not have the mission to drive innovation, but they do have the responsibility to develop the society and drive change for a good society also for the future citizens. And how do you balance these different responsibilities? The last message then is maybe not a challenge, but it could be a challenge, but this client at the follow-up meetings really stressed the importance of workshops like this. And even though the need to discuss specific details and technical solutions maybe was not that big, they highlighted the importance of coming together for longer discussions and to hear the message about why this is important again, and hear it from an external party, an independent expert talking about this. And changing the construction industry is very much about behavioral change and not just about the technical solutions. And the repetition and discussions and time to reflect over why this is important it could really be helped with workshops like this. So maybe that's a good point to end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Again, it was super interesting to hear about your 3 cases, and actually it shows quite well how we've been working in these workshops, that we've been working both with deep technical knowledge and also been trying to have discussions on a more strategic level. So great insights from Sweden. Now we have 5 minutes for questions. I don't have the chat open. Rikke, is there any questions in the chat? No. If you have any questions, please either write in the chat or raise your hand, and then we will open up for questions now.
I have one question. Thank you very much for very good presentations. My name is Helle. I'm from the Nordic Sustainable Construction Program, but I have the chance to ask a question. I found it very interesting, the finding you had, Anna, where you said there was unclarity between the stakeholders of who had the responsibility of making the LCA and making sure that it was valid. Is this a challenge that you found in some of the other countries? Because I would assume that it would be the one who has the responsibility of having the building built and to make sure that it gets to as built and get the permit. But is it a challenge that you have also identified in the other countries?
Yeah, sorry. I just needed to see if I was muted or unmuted. Yeah, I don't really have a good question, good answer for this one. Sorry, but I don't have the overview specific here for this particular question. Sorry.
Maybe you can elaborate on it. Wasn't it the one who paid for having the building built who did the LCA, or?
Yeah, so At the moment, so it was something that was ordered from the client, and the client then so client was paying for it, and then they outsourced it to a consultant. But when it comes to mandatory calculation requirement, then we don't have enough consultants in the market at the moment. And yeah, nobody's really sure like who should be doing it, who is like, is it like BIM coordinator, but then not every project has a BIM coordinator, not every project has a BIM model, or should it be energy efficiency expert, or should it be an architect? So yeah,
in that way. Okay, understand. Where's the function placed in the whole table of stakeholders needed? All right, thank you. That was my question.
I don't think we have anything, any questions in the chat still. No. I mean, if there are no more questions, we can also end the webinar 2 minutes before time. I don't think we will get any more questions. Then we would just like to thank you for participating. And as Maria said in the beginning, this webinar has been recorded and will be published on the Nordic Sustainable Construction Program's website. You will help me here, Helle. You will send out the slides, correct?
So we'll update the event page with all the information when it's possible, and then we will share it. Yes.
So you will get access to both the slides and, of course, also the report, which is now officially launched. So go have a read. But then again, thank you for today, and thank you for participating.
Thank you for very good.